Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. How to lead a company of engineers into the digital age? Well, we're going to find out with the enterprise architect IT at Vaillant. Please welcome Oliver Schwarz.
Thank you very much. As we were preparing that talk, and we were talking about a breakout session that I was supposed to be leading, I wasn't expecting this kind of breakout. So it's quite a venue here, and I'm really flashed to stand here in the middle of you all, and I'm really glad to be here. So I come from a company called Vaillant Group, where Vaillant is one of our main brands, and what we do is we produce heating products. So usually it's kind of an invisible brand because you don't see these products very often. These are kind of white boxes that are hanging on basement walls. But they produce the heat that you need to warm up your home and you feel comfortable. And usually the moment you recognize that you're owning a Vaillant boiler or Vaillant product is when it breaks down. So that's actually quite of a challenge for us. However, we are also hit hard by what we call digital transformation, or what we call the challenge of the digital age, because we are quite an old company, more than 140 years. That is quite a heritage. It's on the positive end a good heritage. On the negative end, it can also be quite challenging to live in that heritage. So don't talk to me about conservative decisions or something like that. So we are really, really settled. But now things are changing in the world around us, and we somehow have to adapt to that. And today I would like to take a glimpse in why enterprise architecture and also why enterprise architects or IT architecture can contribute to that adaptation and to that change that every company is required to do. So just in short about me, I'm 48 years old. I live in the Bergischen Land, which is not far away from here, it's like 50 kilometers. And I actually come from software development. Why is that important? Because I believe that software development is something that every company, or almost every company in the world, has to look into. If we are honest, then we know that our company is already run by software. I would take the bet that nobody can deliver me 10 level 2 or level 3 processes in their company which is not relying on software, on written software, or on bought software, on configured software somewhere. So regardless what you do, if you call your colleague, if you sell your products, if you produce your products, if you order supply parts, whatever, it's all run on software. And we come back to that later and why that is important for companies today, but this is what I believe in, and this is what I think that every company needs to be ready for, to get started into software development, if not accept it as a kind of capability. We're working agile at Vaillant, at least in the area that I'm working in IT, and I've been working for Vaillant for 20 years now, which maybe is a little bit of that heritage that we have, that it's not that usual to change companies every 2 or 3 years. So it's also kind of a settled, confident system in which I'm living in. And maybe it is an important point later on. If you want to contact me, just talk to me or approach me, or you can find me on Twitter, and we can maybe have a talk. So digital transformation, I usually don't like that term. I think it undermines what digital transformation really is about. What we see here is that some ways we do things today will not be there tomorrow anymore. So that means that jobs we have, maybe tools we use, or processes we run through in our everyday life will not be there anymore in 1 year, in half a year, in 10 years, or in 5 years. So just imagine in McDonald's going from a personal welcome at the cash desk and also a computer welcome at the cash desk. Sometimes people stop buying things that they bought just 5 years ago and replace them by something else, which is the same value for them, but it's not the physical product anymore. The same goes for processes that we usually use. Sometimes we exchange things we have used, I don't know, all our lifetime by something else that is helping us to do things more better, more reliable. And this is what I call not digital transformation, but actually I think that this is a kind of revolution. And I strongly believe that in 50 years from now, we don't call it, can you remember that digital transformation at that time? But we will call it, that was like the Industrial Revolution, it was the digital revolution, which completely changes the way on how we do things and what we do and what we buy and what we use. What does that have to do with enterprise architecture? So when you're in a company, it could happen that you see how this is coming up, and that the digital products are coming up, and that there are business models coming up on top of the digital products. And if you have been in that business for quite some time, you see how that happens next to you. There are startups coming up, smaller companies, then bigger companies are adapting to it, and you see how that happens, and of course you reflect it on your own business, and you think, okay, what do I have to do to be able to do my business still in the future? And to answer that, I would like to create an image in your head about how you could be able to do that with your business. So just imagine you are a sportsman or a sportswoman, and you're working in track and field in Decathlon, and you have a lot of disciplines in which you are good at. You're maybe not really good in each one of them, but in general, you're really good at all the disciplines overall. Maybe there are some disciplines in which somebody else comes along and is better than you, but you know how to react on that. In that 10 disciplines you are good in, you are able to improve your training there, improve your performance there. So you're pretty much settled in that. And then suddenly something new comes along. It's not your discipline, it's something completely different. It looks dangerous from the outside. It uses a different kind of skill set that you can't provide. And suddenly you have to think, well, looks nice, looks good, maybe I should invest into that discipline, but as long as nothing else happens and this doesn't become a critical success, you ignore it. And then suddenly people start liking that new discipline, and they buy these products and they go to these events where the discipline is taking place, and you realize that somehow this market in which you were in with the 10 disciplines you were able to do is shifting and is losing the attractiveness to the people. So you have to decide, will I change myself into that discipline? Will I be going to change my company, or will I be going to change my own body as a sportsman into that new discipline that seems to be so attractive and actually is quite some fun to go? So to summarize that up, you are living in a business and you know what you are capable of, you know how to stay on top, and you are able to decide on new capabilities, which is when you're confronted with something new, you are able to evaluate that. So what you have to do then is you have to invest in a training, and you have to have an environment that is able to adapt to these new requirements. This seems to be quite meta level now, but I'm going to go deeper into the details now. And even if possible, you are also able to unlearn old capabilities that you had before. So it all comes down to the capabilities that you have collected in your business and that you are now having to change. Let me give you an example. At Vaillant, we're on the market for very, very long, and we sell a lot of products, actually. The point is we do not sell to consumers. We sell in a 3-tier system. We sell to our wholesalers, which means that we're delivering large deliveries. We bundle them together, and we deliver them to the wholesaler, and the wholesaler sells to the installer, and the installer sells to the end customer. So then what we have to do is we have to create one big bill for the wholesaler. And that means that it's a 6-digit bill maybe in once a year, and we're actually pretty good at that. So we bundle the stuff, we deliver exactly what our partner needs, we're having conditions on that, and when we send out the bill. The bill itself costs about 20 euros to produce. So that means that if it runs through all the systems, if everybody has checked it for governance and compliance reasons, every system which is affected of that bill needs to be checked. And until the bill is ready and can be sent out to the customer, it's about 17 to 20 euro. That's okay if you have a bill of a 6-digit number. Now, we're connecting our products, which means that we have a certain access to the data of our products using Internet of Things. And then suddenly we learn a new thing. We learn that when we analyze the patterns of behavior of our users, of the users of our products, and how he likes his comfort, and we see how the system reacts on these patterns, we learn that using a little bit of algorithms, and maybe you could call it AI or whatever, we could optimize the performance of our boiler. That means if the customer usually says, I would like to have it warm as soon as I'm at breakfast table. That means that the heating has to heat up half an hour before, or maybe an hour before. And then he comes to the breakfast table and it's nice and warm and comfortable. But we learn from the patterns and from the amount of heat loss of the system that it would be better to not start up half an hour before, but 3/4 of an hour before. And there could be a much more nicer, more efficient curve on how to heat up and let the customer save 10% of his energy bill. Could be possible. And even more, we learn that the customer would like to pay for that. So if we offer him the service of giving him that calculation result and modulating his heating system in that way, he would say, well, I would pay for that. Actually, if I, at the end, can save 10% of my energy bill, I would pay for that. The point is, this is kind of, we cannot take much money for that. It's kind of a, maybe it is a subscription fee, but it's a very small bill. It's something like pay 5 euros and we optimize your heating system or something like this. Now, coming back to the bill before, if our bill production is costing us 20 euros, we cannot send out 5 euro bills. Doesn't make sense. And this is an example of a capability that we have learned that we need to have. So our business is changing to new business models, to other business models in the world, and we have to adapt to that. But our system design, from the process view down to the IT landscape, is of another one. So that means that we have to adapt to these new requirements and need to be able to change our systems in that way. So how do you do that? How do you change your system in a 140 years old business? So my claim for that is from plan, build, and run to build, measure, and learn. That's a shift that you have to make. So currently, when you are in a stable business and you know what's coming up next year and you know what's coming up the year after, you can plan everything. You know how your boiler sales are going to be, you know how your consumer is going to behave, how the markets is going to develop, and you can plan everything, and then you can build it, what you have planned, and you can run it. It's okay. But then things change. And the market doesn't develop as you expected, and the products are not selling as expected, and new people are coming along with new business models, and before you are able to adapt to that, you see that all the circumstances of your business are changing. And then you have to go into another mode in the whole company, or at least in a large part of your company, to adapt to these changes. And this is what I call build, measure, learn, because you need another mode in your company to work with. And this also affects your IT architecture. It's not only processes, it's not only people, but it's also really physical hardware, and software, and so on. So I would go for two important words that I would like to refer to in that. The first thing is learning. I come to the details later. The second one is low cost of change. So let me start with learning. When you experience that there's something different, but the product itself that you are experiencing that is invading your market is not yet settled, and you are uncertain on where it's going, is it going, then you need to go into a learning mode. That means you need to observe the market, you need to observe your customers, you need maybe even to collaborate with your customers to create new products, new business models, so that the company itself is able to adapt to these kinds of new products. So what do you do when you learn? When you come back to sports, it's simply training. And would you expect that if you have recognized that there's a new product and you start to train, that you are done in a week or in a day? Probably not. So it will take time until you are able to gain on that training and gain the capabilities you need. So expect that this learning phase is nothing that you can plan for in about a month or two, but it's something that you are continuously going into until you have shaped new business models and new products. This learning will also affect your IT architecture, because usually when we think about architecture and we think about architecture decisions, it's something that's like, okay, I check my decision matrix, I check the values, and then I make a decision. But if you're in a learning situation, this decision could be wrong the next week. So when you look back into that decision, you say, okay, if I knew what I know now, I wouldn't have decided that way. The other thing is the low cost of change. When you are in a learning situation and when your markets around you and the world around you are changing, you have to change yourself as well. And if you have high cost of change, that means if changing anything in your system has a high effort and a high cost, it's quite a bad situation to be in. I tell you why. I'm sure you have heard of integrated architecture. So as often when I talk to IT guys, I talk about integrated architecture. We need to be careful that our architecture is integrated, that our systems are integrated. We need to care for that we have a stable architecture, that everything reacts to each other, is integrated into each other, data models are integrated, processes are integrated. In general, that's a very good thing to have. If you have a stable business, this is perfect. This is a gift. Because if you just make small adjustments on your products and all your processes, you can just simply change a screw and the whole system changes to your new requirements. That's perfect. If you are in an unstable system, this is hell. So if you have an integrated architecture and everything is integrated and you drew one screw and everything changes and you have to test whether the new changes are adapting to the requirements that you have, it's something horrible to do. And it takes a lot of effort to ensure that you're still able to do business later on. So in an uncertain situation and in uncertain markets and in an uncertain world, what you want to have is abstraction between your components in your systems. That means that you are able to change one system without affecting the other. That means that you can exchange whole components without affecting your others. What it takes, of course, are interfaces between those systems. And they need to be well designed, and they need to be part of the product itself. So not having an interface and two simple products, but each product has one interface. And then you are able to abstract these systems from each other so that you are able to change in your architecture without change the whole system landscape, the whole processes that are integrated there. It all comes down to something that I believe very strongly in because I learned a lot of times that this is true. There was a guy in the 60s, there was a very intelligent guy called Melvin Conway. Probably a lot of you have heard of him, and he was saying that every organization is actually doomed to produce systems that are just copies of their communicational structures. That is usually a constraint. And if you have created software in your life, someone, over a team or multiple teams even, you will have learned that this is true. Depending on how you cut your teams and how you develop the software, your software will have a certain design. It is a constraint, but it is also a kind of a shortcut because you can use it to organize or structure your organization in a way that your future architecture can be built by that organization. So how do you do that? You look into your process design. And when you define the beginning and the end of your process steps, so what do you need to start the process? What will be the result of the process? And what do you need to start the next step of the process? In between these process steps, you will have the possibility to cut your organization and also cut your infrastructure landscape towards this process design. Because then you have a kind of a handover situation from one to the other. That's very hard to do, because usually organizations are, let me put it like, they are quite reluctant to change. Change is something bad in the organization, not usually. Usually organizations strive for being stable, for not changing, for being unaffected by change, because we would still want to do our business and we want to do what we are good in. But this is something that you have to do as soon as you see that the environment around you are changing. Now, how do you change? As soon as you start to react on these changes and you start to build up features or change your software, you need to decide on how you will keep up the flexibility of your software. And this is something that I learned is very, very important, that not only adding features, but keeping up the flexibility of your software landscape up to the enterprise level, it's something very crucial that you have to control. If you just build up the new features, if you just build up the new capabilities without looking at keeping up the flexibility, in 10 years, maybe in 5 years, you will land in the same situation you are today. That means if you need to change, keep up the flexibility, maybe until, I don't know, in 20 years, maybe everything has settled and everything is stable again. But until then, keep up the flexibility of your software, which takes a dedicated team of caring for that. Then there's another thing that you have to think of or care for, which is, what do I want to make myself? What do I want to buy? Usually when you're a business like us, we are very much often in that buy situation because we don't have any experience in software development, or not that much, I would say. But sometimes it is necessary, especially if the software is becoming part of your own products, that you invest into that. And then you want to have a model with which you want to decide whether you are going to make something new by your own or you want to buy something from the market. That's usually a very difficult thing to do because both solutions in general on paper look the same. So you could do it yourself and you will recognize the effort that is necessary to do that only in a year or two or more. Or you could buy it from the market, but it could be that it's less flexible for you to use it. So what we usually use is something like a graph to decide whether we want to do that on our own or want to buy something from an existing software. So what we generally say when we are confronted with that problem, everything that is near to the customer, that means our customers are the people that are trusting us and that are paying for the products we provide, and everything that is really unique to us, this is something that we are going to make. And all the rest is something that we're going to buy. So we will never be good in creating an ERP system. We will probably never be good in creating something like an enterprise architecture inventory tool. But probably we are very good in interpreting what our boiler says, and probably are very good in modulating it to a high efficiency. That's something that's our core competence, and this is something that we are going to do on our own. So, what's my takeaway for today? And now I try to bridge to the enterprise architecture part. When you are confronted with change, which could happen to every company today, when you are confronted with change, you should watch and manage your capabilities, the disciplines that you are good in and the disciplines that you want to be good in. And that is almost a strategic tool for you to think, do I want to go into that new discipline? Do I need to go into that new discipline because it's the only one that will be left in the future? And how do I manage that in my company? So first of all, create a list of capabilities that you have and that you want to have. Second thought is constantly manage your architecture. And this goes from the highest level of the enterprise to the lowest level of structures, of systems, of interfaces, of components that talk to each other, of process design. In the time of change, which we are currently in and probably will not get out of it for quite a long time, keep the costs of change as low as possible. Sometimes it's not possible, sometimes it's hard to do, and sometimes you have to put in more effort to keep that low cost than you were expecting, but it's worth it. That is my experience on it. And the fourth one is regarding to Conway's law: cut your products and teams by the process design you do for your company. When you decide on the disciplines what you do, and you make your training plan on how you achieve these goals that you set out, cut the process design, cut your products, and then cut your organization towards these products. I know it's hard to do. I know it's very difficult to do in a lot of companies, but at least try to do it, because I think that it's worth it, and you will have an organization that is able to support you in that new venture to the change world. This is actually also why we chose the enterprise architecture tool that we are using, because it keeps up the flexibility that we need to do exactly that. And we use it as a visualization to make that change happening in our organization and in our company. That's it. So thank you very much. If you would like to, please ask me some questions.